In this video, we're going to be looking at pattern number 13. It's kind of an interesting one, and this is one of the ones that actually took me a couple times to figure out because I was kind of almost overcomplicating it, which is super easy to do when you have, a ton of tools at your disposal. But the main hang up with this guy is when you first look at it. Let me zoom in here so you can see this. Let's get closer. So we all know what the repeating pattern is. So clearly, if we can get this little almost kind of multi-pointed star pattern figured out, that will just generally tile. We also have these little random kind of triangles out here on the corners. That will just kind of take care of itself, I think, later on. We'll get to that later. But really, the bigger problem is, how do you even make this shape? Because there's not really something in here we could use. Let me just double check. Is there a star? So there is, but you'll see the star thing is just really like a 5-pointed, and there's not really any options to do that and change it. So not a huge deal. But what I'm kind of thinking here is if you just ignore, don't look at these as individual pieces, like little points. Look at the broader picture of the shapes. Okay, look at the darker gray. See that square right there? That's a square. And then turn your head a little bit. There's another square right here. And again, there's another square right there. So these are just really 3 squares overlapping. And with an edge detect, I can kind of get that outline around it. So that part, we've already got figured out, just by breaking it down into like slightly simpler kind of primitive shapes. Now let's look at the piece on the outside. Triangle, okay? And then you just turn it. Again, triangle, another triangle, another triangle. So there's really, again, just like that kind of square thing, it just happens to be another primitive shape that's overlapping with itself to kind of get this effect. So let's see if we can figure this out, now that we kind of have a much better idea on how to approach this. So kind of a cool way to build a more complicated pattern. We're going to start off with a shape. We're just going to scale that down a little bit. And let's try to build the center one first, the darker gray. So I have 3 squares overlapping. Let's take the scale to maybe 0.7. Actually, let's do 0.5 because when I start rotating this, I might get a little bit of overlap. Now there's 3 of them, so I need to rotate them at even degrees, so collectively it makes like a perfect 360. So there's a little bit of math involved here, but we're going to take a transform, and I'm going to connect this into a transform. Actually, let me make sure one of these is flat. Okay, one square is flat. Okay, good. So that one's done. This guy, though, we need to turn 120 degrees. Now I also want to have another one down here that is 240 degrees. Now, something kind of interesting here happened, which I'm not personally too crazy about, and how they have this set up inside of Designer. It's one of my little kind of issues with it, is you'll notice when I duplicated this, how it's saying there's 0 rotation. It's because this is almost like a button you apply, and every time you hit it, it kind of resets to 0, even though visually it has rotated. So it's not like a slider you can move back and forth. So it's kind of odd that like this has already been set to 120, even though you don't see that number anymore. This has been duplicated. It's already rotated to 120 degrees, but you wouldn't know that because it's saying 0. So to do 240, I just have to type in 120 degrees again, and now it's at 240. It's a little weird. I'm not really too sure why they have it set up like that. There's probably a reason, but once you kind of figure it out, it's not that big of a deal. All right, let's blend these guys together. So we're going to make a blend mode, blend node. Take both these guys, put them in there. The blend mode is going to be set to max. Okay, there's one. Take this guy. Let's do the same thing. Put that up there. And blend mode is going to be max. Bam. We've already got the inner part knocked out. Now let's try doing the triangle. Now what I'm hoping is, because I only scaled it down and I never moved this side to side or up and down, I hope this means that I don't have to shift that triangle around too much to get this to work. Because typically each shape or polygon is perfectly centered. So if everything works out, they should just overlap without me having to kind of nudge it around and zooming in too much. So how many triangles we got on this guy? So I have, let's see how many points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's 12 points total. 3 points to a triangle. So 4 triangles would be needed to make all 12 points. So 4 times 3 is 12. So we need 4 of these guys. Okay, I think we've got this. We're going to make a polygon. Let's put this down to 3 sides. Let's figure out which one we want to start with here. One is start aiming up. Let's kind of do that one first. I'm actually going to rotate this so it's starting with the one that's pointing upward. Let's just bring that down a little bit as well, like maybe 0.8. And we're just going to repeat the same process we did over here, but with a new shape. So we're going to put that there. There's one. We're going to make the transform node for it, connect it into it. Okay, now on this guy, since I think we need 4 of these total, so this time I'm not doing 120 degrees. I need to do 90 degrees, because 4 times 90 is 360. That's my full rotation. So we're going to go in here, let's do 90. And I can just hit a button for that one. Okay, let's duplicate it again. 90. Duplicate that one. 90. And those should be the 4 I need. Yep, I think that'll work. Let's blend them together. Okay, that seems fine. Let's do the next one. Okay, just blend in the next shape. Again, the input order is not going to matter right now because we're just doing max lighten, which is very similar to addition. I think we've got it. Yeah, that looks right. Okay. Now, from here, we got to get these guys to blend together. There's a bunch of ways to do this. Probably what we could do is, let's just get the 2 colors to mix, and I think if we do some type of edge detect around that darker shape, that should kind of fill in the gaps. Okay. So I want this one to be darker. So we're going to come up here. Let's do a levels and just pull the gain down to about 50%. And I'm going to blend these together and just see what they even look like. So what happens when we do a max? Okay, so we have a problem here. You can see because that one is overwhelming this guy. Okay, that's not going to work. What if I do min? Interesting. Also not going to work. Okay. What about subtract? Ah, there we go. So I'm just kind of trying out my different modes. This is the one we want. So the other ones are giving me some issues. Sometimes you just have to kind of click through these and maybe play around with inverting some of my colors to get it to work. But we got subtraction to work here. We're subtracting that 50% gray out of this. Now, if you had it set, if you didn't do the levels, it would turn it black, which also could be something useful. Again, we could have done that and probably still got it to work. But I think now that we've got it to this point here, what I'm going to do is take the shape from the triangles and put a transform on it, because I just need to scale this guy up a little bit more. Let's double click on the blend, click on the transform, and we're going to zoom in so I can do that Command Shift on the corner point and just boost this up right to about there. Let's come back and let's check it out. That looks correct. The only thing I'm missing is the thin black outline between the 2 sections. That I know we can do. That is going to be an edge detect on one of these shapes. So let's make an edge detect somewhere over here, and I'm going to edge detect that guy. Let's put that in here, and we're going to do no roundness again. Let's leave it kind of the same thickness and just see what this looks like. I don't have to invert it. We could leave it as a black line, and I could do a molt, and that should work. So let's take that guy, multiply it against this one. Yep, that looks right. Yes, that's correct. We've got it. There's our shape. Now let's try to tile it and see what happens. And now keep in mind too, I haven't done these little triangles over here. These little guys that are in the corner, that hasn't really come up. Am I going to have room for that? Okay, now there's a chance if I tile it, I might have to include those triangles in here somewhere. So what I'm going to do is take the result of this whole thing and just scale it down a little bit. And let's turn off that tiling on the transform node. So I'm kind of giving myself a gap just in case I have to put in those triangles somewhere before I hit the tile generator. But let's do the generator real quick and just knock that out. So we've got, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 vertically. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 across. Okay, that's easy enough. 8 by 8 with our staggered vertical offset, which is something we've done quite a bit. I feel like that's about half the patterns this month have all been kind of the same effect. So we'll drop a tile generator on that guy, make sure that this is going into the pattern input, and we're going to put that to pattern input. Let's make this our 8 by 8, just like we saw in the reference. We're going to come down to the position. We're going to offset that by about 50%. You can tell we're already getting really close. And let's just scale these up and just see what happens. Now let's check out the reference. Do they touch? So they do connect diagonally. Vertically, not quite there. Okay, so what happened? I actually have the offset going the wrong way. See how they're offset like this way? That's why they're not, the points aren't touching right there. It's not colliding. So what I need to do is go back to the generator and say vertical offset. There it is. Now it's kind of flipping the way it's sliding things around with the offset. Okay, so we need to bring this up just a little more on scale, right about there, maybe just a tiny bit more. Yeah, that probably is about right. Yes. And now I need to play with the width because I need that point to touch that one. See how they're kind of colliding right there? So that is going to be from the interstice X. Okay, I have to go negative again. Wish they would just include that so it's not always positive. But if we do negative, we can just bring that down a little bit right about to there. And maybe on the Y, I could just play around with that position a little bit if I felt like it was just a tiny bit off. I like that. Now this is kind of what I was saying where I thought we were going to have to come back and add those triangles because you can see we have that little gap right there and I think that's where it's supposed to be hanging out. Yep, that is it. Yeah, so I need a triangle to connect those 3 points. And if we tile it, we have to figure out how many triangles do we need. For each one of these guys, there's 2 triangles, so it's always above it. So let's try that out. We need to get this triangle to be what color? It's going to be white like the points. Okay, that should be pretty easy. I think I can mirror it too to get this right. So let's do a, sorry, not a shape node, a polygon, right? Because I want to pick my sides. Let's go down to 3. Double click, let's back this guy up. And I'm going to have to scale this down probably quite a bit. We'll just do like 0.5 for right now. And I'm also going to do a transform so I can play around with the position. And because I want to have both sides mirroring each other, so I'm not doing each piece separately. After the transform, let's also do mirror grayscale. The reason I'm doing that, because now if I go back to the transform here, let me scale that down quite a bit. It's still way too big. Yeah, now see how they're kind of like on the mirror? They're just kind of following each other. Okay, let's try to get this to work with this guy. So what I'm going to do is over here, let's take this, make a blend node. This is going to max with it. There they are. Now I can work on getting the position right. Now let me look at the generator too, because they're already in there. All right, let's zoom in. It's all about that transform now. I can just click on it, hold shift. Let's move this guy up. Where is that? I bet I'm gonna have to scale this down even more. Let me come back to this one. No, that should fit. All right, let's come back here one more time. Let's do this again. All right, almost there. Move it over. Okay, they're mirroring. Let's bring the scale down. Couldn't even do that on the polygon node, I guess. Oh man, we're so close. Transform. Move up just a little bit. I'm kind of nudging into position. Move it over a little more. Back in the polygon. Let's just bring down that scale just a tiny bit. Yeah, I think we've got it. Now I'm just moving it a couple pixels over and up. Got it. That was it. Let me just double check it, but I'm pretty sure we did it. That looks perfect to me. This is a really, really close match. Awesome. So there you go. We've just accomplished pattern number 13.